What's up, crew? It's Chris with CloverTac, and welcome back to the channel. We're out on the range today and putting some more rounds through the Avidity Arms PD10 handgun today. Now, I've gotten some questions about this handgun from a few viewers out there. I've got some questions myself, and I could try to answer those, but I thought, you know what? Let's go inside. Let's try to give the designer of this handgun a call, and we can just ask him. So let's go. All right, here we go. Make this call. See if we can get him on the line and get some questions answered. Maybe.
Hey, Chris, what's going on?
What's happening, Rob?
I'm just enjoying a full day at the Western HQ.
A full day.
Yeah, a full weekday anyway. It's been a while.
Right. Well,
I'm back to North Carolina tomorrow, but here all day.
Yeah, you're all over the place all the time, though, so that's normal for you.
Yeah, it's not, it's like chosen lifestyle, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody's got their thing. Sitting here with a PD10, got a few questions. You got a minute?
Well, let's do it.
So,
first of all, I know you've been shooting it. Obviously, I saw the YouTube video you posted. Appreciate that as always.
Yeah, you bet.
I was out hunting all last week.
You were.
Seems to have gone well, and even though you were the first person I think has complained about the thinness, but I get that it's not always going to be everything for everyone.
Right.
But if nothing else, I was like, all right, good. If somebody's complaining about the thinness, at least that accentuates the thinness.
Well, you know how it is with when it comes to firearms. Like, it's a personal thing. Absolutely. And it doesn't mean there's a right or wrong. It's just, that's a fit for some people or a preference or whatever the case may be. But speaking of that thinness, that's one of the things. Since I did have kind of a hang up on the thinness, honestly, that's the first question I was going to ask you, Rob. What is the thought from the designer, from your thoughts behind the thinness? Where does that come from? I know you've got a reason for it, obviously.
Yeah, it's just I kind of always preface the why is the gun the way it is with the watching thousands of hands on thousands of guns
for
a couple decades, at all levels. And the thing that prevents when a gun doesn't fit someone's hand, any given gun, any given hand, overwhelmingly it's not just the thickness, but it sort of starts as, is the gun too thick somewhere in the grip area, but specifically at the top of the grip. Sort of if you take the difference between like just measuring a straight line from the front of the trigger to the back of the grip. Right. You actually take like a measuring tape or a piece of string and check the entire real circumference of all the surfaces around that area.
Right.
And the thinner that is, the more hands can fit the gun. And the way that works is a larger hand usually can accommodate within reason a gun that's on the thinner side, but a smaller hand, or even someone with a large hand but short digits, particularly short thumbs, the gun just won't fit them if it's beyond a certain width. So getting the gun as thin as possible really starts as a function of trying to get the gun to fit as many hands as possible. And then I think it has some other benefits in terms of carryability and concealability as well, obviously.
Right. And then, one of the things with it being thin, a couple of questions that honestly I had in relation to the magazines on this thing. So no concerns with the design that you were going to have to go single stack, right?
No, for me, no. I mean, you got to remember, I was 10, 12 years ago, I was, popularizing the idea of the Glock 26L, right? Like taking a Glock 19, cutting down the grip area and reforming it so it could take Glock 26 magazines, which then gives you a 10+1 4-inch gun, right? So or 4.19-inch gun. I think it is with the Glock 19 size slide on a Glock 26 size frame. So I have no problem with a 10+1 gun at all from a personal standpoint. And even like you said in your video, something about carrying J-frames, right? Like we've all done that at different peer points in time. And is it the optimum? No. Is it I'm negligent and reckless to go out that way and think I can prepare, I'm prepared to defend myself. No, also. So I think 10+1 is just a fine, dandy place to be for a defensive carry gun.
Right. I think it probably is a happy medium, Now with the magazines, the floor plate specifically, there's the little notch on the front, and you've probably explained that to me before. I did not cover that in the last video. What's up with that notch?
Yeah, it's the claw feature that we have on the rear sight that's just applied to the magazine. So for one-handed stripping especially, but it can also aid for two-handed. If you're just trying to pull that magazine out, like for what we traditionally would call a double feed,
right.
If the magazine fails to drop free and you need to extract it, sometimes having a little something extra to purchase on can help, and especially one-handed.
Right.
So we've gone back and forth internally, and I'm honestly just behind the curve. In 2024, we will have flat front-faced base plates available, and we've talked about the idea of shipping the gun with one claw base plate and one non-claw. In other words, your backup magazine might not have the claw on it.
Right.
And then make the claw ones available. We're going to have aluminum back plates coming out, the base plates, I should say, soon. The back plate on the slide is already made out of aluminum, which opens itself up to anodizing a couple different colors and doing some different things.
Right.
When we come out with the long slide version in Q1 of 2024, we'll also have some target kind of packages available. Maybe somebody's going to use them for competition, and those will have a little bit more bling to them, including some of those aluminum upgrade parts. Right.
Now on the moving on here to the trigger, kind of moving forward. I describe the trigger. It's an average trigger, I think, for a striker fire, and which is I think fine on a carry firearm. You don't want anything super light, obviously. And I described it. The best word I can come up with is tactile. But your thoughts in the design on the trigger, it doesn't look like you wanted the super high grade match trigger type situation. Does that just stem from years of experience as well? Well, yeah, on the one hand, you got to remember there's a difference between just shooting and defensive shooting. Correct.
So what we can do on the range, I would often compare the range to a racetrack, right? If you want to be on a track and maximize your performance, you're going to have slick tires, and you're going to rip the back seats out of your car. You're not going to have an air conditioner and all that kind of stuff, right? Obviously, that's not how people drive around every day, even though they have high performance cars. I think that the reality is, thankfully, because people don't need to use their defensive guns very often, I think a lot of people, at least in the classes, and when they go and do their quote-unquote practice, they're using track guns, if you will, not really everyday guns. And one of the places I think that's most obvious is the trigger and the types of triggers people tend to prefer and even put into their defensive carry guns. The other place would be like sights. I think people really obsess over reaching the maximum potential with their gun on the range, and what can they do in a controlled environment. Can they hit a golf ball at 100 yards? Can they shoot a one-hole group at 7 yards offhand? Whatever, like that kind of stuff. That's the equivalent of buying a Corvette and only worrying about being able to go 200 miles an hour like every time you can.
Right. Yeah.
So if you're going to rent a track or go to the Salt Flats or something, then cool, go for that 200. But that's not your everyday thing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I say, go back to, thankfully, we don't have to defend ourselves with a gun every day, but you're hard-pressed to find a situation where somebody's going to need the capability that comes from tight sights, a red dot set up for 25 yards, or a match-grade trigger. So the real focus of this trigger was to avoid a wall, to avoid what has become common and honestly become expected now, I think, in guns, is a two-stage trigger, essentially, a Glock-type trigger and any striker-fired gun is going to have a change in the weight or the feel of the pressure as you pull the trigger, but the default now is to have a really, almost nothing at the beginning of the trigger press and then a really hard wall, and then most people think of when they're on the range as the part where they pay attention to the trigger press. This gun is set up to be much more consistent. So once you start feeling the pressure, you feel that pressure for a longer period of time, but you don't get a big increase in pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to avoid the wall because, again, what do I see in classes? I see a lot of people who try to set up they stage the trigger.
Stage it, yeah.
Wall,
yeah.
Then they try to make everything perfect. They hold their breath and they end up, shanking the shot or something. Whenever there's any kind of decision making or dynamic aspect to the drill, so just get rid of that. And most of us, who've been around long enough, we learned how to shoot with double action triggers. You can pull a trigger until the gun goes off. You don't need a wall. And some people pick up the PD10 and think something's wrong with it. It's like, no, that's how it's supposed to be. And
right.
I find it to be very much good enough, if not a really good trigger.
Yeah.
For defense applications.
I can remember SHOT Show Range Day. It's been several years ago now. It was pre-cough for sure. You had one of the prototypes there, and I remember making that remark with the trigger. I was like, and that was with one of the prototypes that, hey, this is not saying it's bad, but it's different. It's something that I'm not used to. It's just as foreign. It's weird.
And it will have a lighter version, again, like with that trigger, with the target shooting package that will be available next year. There's going to be a lighter version. You can think of it as your 5.5 is what comes stock, and you get a 3.5 option. It will have the same style of trigger, but it will be a lighter trigger pull in that long slide target option next year. Right.
And then finally, I mean, this thing, you've got the accessory rail on the front, which is, common standard practice nowadays for a handgun. And that's just a kind of a personal preference for you. I mean, obviously folks can run a light flashlight or something like that. As far as your carry handgun, as far as your experience being an instructor, where do you come down on handgun flashlights?
I'm not a big fan, honestly. I think it's something that people obsess over a little bit too much in some circles. I'm unaware of truly defensive shootings where you weren't very well aware of where the bad guy was and
right.
Didn't have enough light to be able to use the sights or an optic. Again, mostly iron sights or intuitive shooting, unsighted fire, just driving the gun out in parallel with the line of sight, pressing the trigger smoothly enough to get the hits that are needed. We know in offensive situations where SWAT teams or military guys are searching for bad guys, it makes all the sense in the world to have a light on your gun.
Right.
But you shouldn't be searching for conflict. You shouldn't be searching for a bad guy in a defensive situation. If anything, you're searching for an exit.
Right.
You're searching for your family members, and I don't want you using your gun as a flashlight. So there's two things about the gun that were not originally specified that back in the day when I originally did the list of things I want on the gun. One is the optic ready slide, and the other is the accessory rail. Both of those were added. The accessory rail was added relatively early, just because the market really does want that. They wanted it for almost 20 years now.
Exactly.
And the optic readiness was added, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years ago. We just decided when this gun finally comes to market, we'll have at least an optic ready version.
Right.
And now, as of 2024, all of the slides will be optic ready. And I think that's obvious why that is. One of the things that was important to me is that we set it up optic ready with a low enough mounting solution for the popular thin RDSs, thin red dot sights,
sure,
that you can still use the sights that ship with the gun. So if you get a Holosun 507 or 407K, the EPS carry, the RMSC shield, any of those optics, any of those size of optics work really well with this plate, and you can still use the sights that come with the gun. You don't need to get suppressor height sights. One of the other things I'll say about the rail, from my standpoint, I think if you expand the circumstances under which you can use the gun with a laser in a way that you really don't with flashlight. So the flashlight, you still need to have the gun in extension, right? Extended in your line of sight, and have some other means of aiming the gun, even if it's just your kinesthetic alignment, or you're shooting while in contact, in which case the flashlight still doesn't matter. With the laser on the gun, then you can actually find yourself in compromised positions shooting beyond 2 arms reach where the gun isn't in your line of sight, but you can still accurately predict where the bullet's going to go. So if somebody's going to put a light on their gun, I'm really a big fan of something like Meridian Weapon Technologies light laser combos, and they make some small ones that actually fit really well and look really well. They look like they belong on the PD10.
Right. Awesome. Well, Rob, that's all I've got for you, bro. I appreciate it.
All right, man. I appreciate everything's good with you.
Everything is great, man.
All right. Keep in touch. If I can do anything else for you, let me know.
All righty. Be safe, bro. Bye. Big thanks to Rob for taking our call and answering those questions today. I'm headed back out to the range to play with that PD10 a little more. But if you want to see the PD10 in action, rounds on steel, rounds on paper. I have that video for you right here as for this when we're done. So thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. And until next time, don't forget to chain fire freedom. Bye.